By the time this comes out, I heard you say it out there. This premiered at Cannes last year, right? So it'll be almost a full year since it premiered. Are you glad that it'll finally people get a chance to see it and will hopefully come out and pay money to see it and
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Did this crowd pay money?
Pay for their snacks.
There you go.
No, but seriously, I mean, are you decided to finally get it out there, like in the world, and just?
Oh yeah, this is the best part.
Yeah.
It's been living in the festival circuit for a long time. A year before that, as far as the production and the writing before that. And this is the best part because you get so close to a movie when you're going through it and doing so much technical editing, and you're like an inch away from everything, and it starts to not make sense anymore, and it's fun to step back and release it out into the wild and see it through other people's eyes. And so far so good. It's been exciting.
Tell us how like this scene, this punk rock scene, what did that play? What did that scene play in your life as you were growing up? Like, tell me how deep do your roots go into that scene, and why did you want to set a movie in that scene?
They go very deep. I think it started off with skateboarding when I was 8 years old, and skateboarding is very much associated with the punk rock scene. And I would be around older, cooler kids with T-shirts that I didn't recognize, and I would try to remember the band names, and then go ask my mom to drive me to the record store, pick out the records, or pick out the cassettes rather, take them home, blind, pop them in, and be like, this kind of sucks. And well, actually, no, I like it. It's an acquired taste. And once you get into it, you feel it's just about the energy, and it wasn't until I actually ended up going to shows where you realize the true value of the punk rock, hardcore scene, whatever it is being there. It's very physical. It's textural, and that's what I want to capture. When you're present, when you're out tracking down records on the road and bringing them home, it's just so tactile. And this environment is like super cheap Mad Max. It's like all the wonderful textures for 1/zillionth the price. And I thought also just that kinetic energy and the music itself was so propulsive and energetic that I wanted to capture that. So I set this whole movie in that world and steeped it in as much sort of authentic detail as possible, but then I kind of let it all go. It became the background and the setting, and not so much, there's not a lot of monologues about why we're punk and why we're Nazis. It's just like, you're there, you feel it. And so I thought it was a perfect backdrop for the films I like to make, which are aggressive and visual.
Yeah. Some people who in the initial reviews sort of lumped this into the horror category, and while there's certainly some horrific things that go on in here, I don't know, and then the level of gore sort of reminds people of horror. I think it's been a few months since I've seen it, but there's a sequence where Anton Yelchin gives a speech about paintball, and then that's when you realize you're watching a war movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, was that kind of the idea, was to do your version? Because that is sort of your thing, is you made an assassin movie the first time about a guy who had no clue how to kill anybody. And in this movie, you've got a war movie with these guys that are not soldiers, but still they somehow rise to the occasion.
Yeah, it was fun. It's like civilians versus soldiers.
Yeah,
That was the premise. And you're surrounded by a live sort of grindcore metal concert, which is really an added dynamic that I loved. But absolutely, the references that I used going into this were Platoon, Apocalypse Now, because I knew it could easily be categorized as a horror film, and that's okay if people do that. I mean, you're in a venue with black walls, with black light and posters and graffiti, and it looks like a haunted house, But the way I treated the violence and the clash between these two groups was a battle, and not a sort of sadistic slasher bloodlust going on. It seems like that when you're experiencing it in the moment, but then you realize later that there's a very practical, brutally pragmatic reason behind all this carnage, and then becomes just a mop-up operation.
I want to make sure you guys get time to ask some questions, but I got to ask, just talk about the presence of Patrick Stewart he's Shakespearean trained, he's played practically every Shakespeare character. In fact, I mean, you wisely cast him as the smartest guy in the story, and I love that anytime he formulates a plan, of course the plan goes wrong, but then he recalculates things. You can see the way his brain is always updating his plan so that he still has the same outcome as he did in the beginning. Yeah, make it look a certain way, and make it look like they're not involved. And so, but just having him there, what did that add? What did you learn from that? What did that add to the environment?
I mean, just getting him was, of course, his decision. He chose us.
He came to you.
He stooped to our level, and that made us all very happy and increased morale. And there's a story I've been telling, which is like really my favorite. It's Samuel Summer, who plays the skinhead who gets trapped in the basement there towards the end. He gets, meets his demise by Imogen Poots. Is this being Periscope? Don't spoil this shit. I get nervous now. But he was doing the costume fitting backstage, and he looked up and he saw all these headshots for reference, And he was getting his boots and his braces and getting his skinhead garb, and he's a very nice guy. He's like, "Hey, is that like your mood board?" And I was like, "No, Samuel, that's our cast." And he was like, "Patrick Stewart, holy shit!" And then I was like, "Oh yeah, holy fuck, Patrick Stewart's in the movie. It's amazing." But it was also like, the skeptic in me, the sort of indie film neurotic guy coming from the gutter filmmaking. I was bracing for some kind of impact, like, oh shit, the famous guy's gonna come on set and it's gonna be weird. He's not gonna look me in the eye. But he just came right on set, melted in, and was just an amazing actor. He brought his craft. He was very kind, generous with me. So he was a dream to work with. And yeah, I mean, his character is really fun because he doesn't have these big monologues. He doesn't go off. He has like a few moments of just like quiet rage, and he loses his cool once, and he apologizes. He face palms my high school best friend. I apologize. That's because he's pragmatic. He's there. He's reluctant, but he's hell bent, to clean this up. So it was really fun, and we worked together to do the quietest performance he's ever performed on stage or a screen in his entire career. Wow. And that was part of the fun, is the intimacy. We very close mic'd, quiet, just sort of exchanges. And that was just fun to explore. And he, of course, was looking for a change. He wanted to shake things up. He wanted to try something new, and just so happened that there was a serendipitous timing with our insane punk rock genre movie and his desire to take a leap.
There you go. All right, who has a question? Yeah, right here.
So, you really think like your characters and your settings has a lot of great internal logic? So like in terms of Blue Ruin, like the faucet, you hear the feedback with the microphone. Do you ever get lost when you're sort of creating your characters in your world?
Do I get lost creating the characters in the world? All the time. Can't you see? The fun thing is when I get lost and I find a dead end, I don't indulge in an easy way out. I don't say, oh, well, someone's gonna come in, or they have a secret talent. They just get killed. And it's sad, but it's true, and so it's fun. I love being like, holy shit, there's an air duct. I'm like, because it's up to code, it's 6 inches fucking wide, you're not getting out. Dead end, next. You can't do that in movies, and I was, for some reason, able to do that. It's very pleasurable.
On the aisle there?
Why do you think everybody fucking loves Credence?
If you don't know, you better ask somebody else.
Good answer. Yeah.
In terms of, what did you tell Patrick Stewart in terms of his character's background? Because it seemed like either he's using the Nazi thing as an excuse to run a drug empire, or he's using these true believers. but it seemed like he was so methodical that he almost had like a corporate background, like he was Six Sigma certified or something.
Yeah, no, his character was certainly fleshed out, and that's more like the backstory we developed. And that's when we engaged Patrick Stewart, he actually wanted that because he didn't want to change a word of the script. He doesn't want to disrupt the narrative because it was pretty tightly wound. But he also needed something to sink into in order to sort of navigate this world where it's very much surface level. It's all this implied depth and history. So my buddy Macon, who plays Gabe, and I, we kind of just compiled a history based on research I had already gathered. And yes, a lot of these people are political figures. They have other businesses, and they use punk rock or hardcore to recruit people who are just looking for a home, looking for camaraderie and belonging, and they start to pervert their whatever like angst or energy they have, and they distort it and channel it in a hateful way. So he's like, yeah, he has a job in town. It's hard to see when he drives up, but it's an HVAC business in town. Just that's what he does. Does pretty well too.
Who's anyone in the back? Oh, over there on the aisle. Yeah, sorry, it's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to see it that way.
So I was watching Blue Ruin last night, or I watched Blue Ruin rather in preparation for this, and I noticed between that and this, you have a very unique way of showing violence and gore and death in a way that's unflinching, but not in a way that feels like we're watching Saw or something. So I was wondering if you have a certain philosophy when it comes to how you portray violence and death and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I do have a philosophy about violence, and there's a few rules I try to adhere to, and then I'll break them. But in general, you can totally have gratuitous close-ups for non-fatal wounds. It has to have an emotional impact. It has to be with a grounded character usually. Even the bad guys in the movie, they try to really humanize them. It has to have a narrative purpose, and I have to have an intention. I mean, that part of the film, just because of the necessity of fabricating dog puppets and building prosthetics and doing head casts, is a 12-week lead before we even start shooting. So that's all storyboarded shot by shot, and after discussions with the makeup artists, how to work that. And so it's all very much intentional and designed. And sometimes it's a terrible, terrible, brutal sequence. But when Imogen Poots has to become a killer, I force you to see it from her point of view. Full frontal, quiet, just a punch to the gut. And sometimes I just need a little bit of rock and roll. And I let people, sort of overcome odds and shoot somebody in the head. But it's all based on a need. I think the film, this is escapist, kind of high energy, high tension cinema. It's an experience. And so it's entertainment first, but I really try to be true to the characters. And again, when there is an on-screen death, there is a certain amount of reverence for that loss, no matter who it is. And I hope that transfers. And when there's sometimes just often elation, and that's not just celebrating a murder, it's celebrating a survival, And that's kind of the general approach I take.